I think one of the first questions I'd ask her is, in this next phase of life, what is the growth that you want to see in yourself for this next move?
Okay.
And that could be in relationships, like I said, too, when you're looking for this next person, what is that transformation that you want that relationship to have in you?
Hmm.
And so once you first identify that, then the next piece is then what is the transformation that you want to have in that career, for that job? Like, what can you do for that place, or what do you see your talents doing for X, Y, and Z?
Okay.
But I think those are the first two questions that we have to start with when you're looking at what my purpose is. What is transfer? How do you want to feel?
Welcome to Permission to Heal. I am Marcy Brockman, and I am so glad you're here. In this podcast, we engage in meaningful, deeply human conversations using our voices to inspire connection, compassion, understanding, empathy, and wholehearted wellness. I want you to find the courage to transform yourself no matter what others tell you. Only you can give yourself permission to trust yourself, permission to take care of yourself, permission to follow your heart and desires, and build a life of love, home, and belonging. Through sharing our stories, we will help each other to heal and create the healthy, meaningful lives we richly deserve. We only need our own permission to begin.
So welcome to the podcast. Welcome to Permission to Heal, Shari. So nice to meet
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's great to meet you.
Wonderful. Yeah, as soon as your publicist sent me all of your stuff, I was like, sight unseen. Yes, I have to see her. She must be a guest on this podcast. I love the imperfectly perfect life. I love the concept of that. I think we all live these very imperfect lives that we struggle not to judge from the inside. Like you see everyone else has curated everything from the outside, and then we think we're such a mess, but we're really not. Not any more than anyone else is.
That's what it is. We're no more messier than the other person sitting next to us.
Exactly. I mean, the mess may be slightly different. We all have our own peculiarities and idiosyncrasies and our own experiences, but ultimately it comes down to the same human emotions we all share, especially women in midlife.
Yes,
Yeah. I
exactly.
know things went off the hook for me in my mid 40s when I started with the perimenopause stuff. And, I was divorced and a single mom and working 3 jobs, and my parents are aging. And, there's like all this stuff. Oy. So I love the whole mess is your message thing. So awesome. Okay. So before we get into all of that, I usually do the 6 quick questions. They're just like
Okay.
instant your response, no planning necessary. There's no wrong answer to any of them. Um,
Okay.
so what 6 words would you use to describe yourself?
6 words. Let's go with friend,
Mm-hmm.
student, teacher, planner, writer, and kind.
Nice. I love that 5 of the 6 were nouns and there was only one adjective. That's
Oh, I wasn't even paying attention.
I like that. I like that. So many people feel like they get stuck in the description because you describe yourself. They get stuck in the adjective thing, but it really could be anything. I love that. What's your favorite way to spend a day?
Well, actually, to tell you the truth, it really is my work that I'm doing now. And
Mm-hmm.
that's when I'm not visiting my kids. I just recently became an empty nester. So I'm enjoying when I get my weekends to visit my kids who are away at college.
Mm-hmm.
But I know I'm in the right spot as a life coach and a writer, because when I wake up every day, I'm excited when I'm able to have a full work day
That's
to be in
awesome.
my office.
What's that quote? Just flew right out of my head about what the heck is that quote? Some I don't know. It's gone. It's gone. Something about you're never going to feel like you're working if you love what you do. Whatever.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I know. I don't know the exact quote that you're thinking of, but I know the sentiment, and it
Yeah.
is absolutely true. I've been in career in fields where I didn't love what I was doing. And I would definitely not say that was my favorite way to spend my day, was at work, like I'm able to say now.
Absolutely. I know what you mean. I did 7 things before I became a teacher, and I didn't think that that would last that long, but it's 27 years and I love it still. So
Wow.
it's pretty great. Okay. What's your favorite childhood memory?
My favorite childhood memory, I don't have one specific childhood memory that stands out, but I know when I was the happiest was when I was with my dad and I would make him laugh. He had a great sense of humor, and one of my favorite memories is whenever he thought I was witty and
Nice.
I made him laugh.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, you talk in your book about how close you were with your dad.
Yeah,
That's
yeah, definitely.
that's pretty wonderful.
And then when I talk about that, I can just picture his face lighting up, and just feeling so good about myself when I'd
Sure.
see that.
That's wonderful. Okay. Number 4, what is your favorite meal?
A meal that I don't eat often is spaghetti and meatballs. Like if I had a last meal to choose, that's what I would choose.
Homemade or from a specific restaurant or a specific relative or
Honestly, my bar is so low when it comes to spaghetti and meatballs. It doesn't matter who made it or if it was homemade or from a can. I probably would just like eat that up so quickly.
is it what is it about it that you avoid? The pasta, the calories, the
Well, I stopped eating red meat, not entirely. Like if I went to somebody's house and they served red meat, I'd eat it. But as a general rule, I'm avoiding red meat.
Mhm.
Something I just started doing in the last year or two, and I just because once I start eating pasta, I can't stop. So I try to stay away from that a little bit. But that would be my choice for my like birthday meal, my last meal, be spaghetti and meatballs.
Okay. Well, let's hope you don't face a last meal, kind of thing.
Yes, anytime soon, right?
Anytime soon. Absolutely. Number 5, what one piece of advice would you like to give your younger self?
I would tell my younger self that when you feel you're being judged by somebody, that is about that person and not about you. Because so
Yes.
much of my younger self, and when I say younger self, I'm talking 40 and under. I'm not talking about, just as a little kid.
Sure.
Much of my early adult life, teenage years was spent, worrying about other people's judgments and really taking those in personally as if they were my truths.
Yeah. So many of us do that. We're sort of acculturated. We're grown up, raised up with that as our MO, as our template. We look outside of ourselves for approval, and our image of ourself, our self-esteem, our sense of who we are in the world is mostly contingent upon other people's happiness with us. And I think women and girls share the burden of that most of the time. I'm sure there are some men, I'm certainly not going to say that no men feel that way, but I think it affects women much more than men because
Especially
of the
the
way we're
social,
raised.
yeah, and the social media generation. My daughter is 21 and a half right now, and she's kind of the first generation really going through the social media
Sure.
generation in such a heavy sense as a young adult. And I can't imagine that myself. So I'm glad that piece wasn't there for me when I was her age.
Yeah, we have kids the same age. My son is 23 and my daughter's 20. And,
Yes.
my son was not so affected by social media as much as my daughter. He sort of uses it now and then to post pictures of random things. But my daughter's on it a lot. And I think that she went through a very rough time when she was in high school because of what was going on with social media, what people were saying and who was being included in group things and who wasn't. And it just makes the angst of
Exactly.
teenagehood so much more difficult to deal with.
Yes, absolutely. And I have a son too. He's 19, and same experience. He's on it rarely.
Yeah.
I think he's just on it because he needs to be as far as connections with other people, but
Hmm.
he's not, it's not used in the same way as my daughter and her friends use it.
Yeah. That's an interesting sociological study right there. Gender usage of social media, but that's another thing. All right, last question. What is one thing you would most like to change about the world?
I really would like to get the world to sit down and listen.
Huh.
I think that's the biggest problem that I see right now. both, on a small level that happens in families all the way to globally.
Sure.
We've forgotten how to listen.
We have. And to really hear what the other person is saying. Not just let the words wash over us, waiting for the pause in the sentence for us to interject what we're already planning on saying, but to actually listen and not plan your response ahead of time, but to listen and really absorb and try to understand and accept and allow the difference, the diversity of ideas in to change us.
Exactly. And to ask questions. We've forgotten how to ask questions. When we disagree with someone, we've forgotten to ask their why and to try to figure out why they believe what they believe, or if we even understand them correctly. We've forgotten how to ask questions to help us in that listening piece.
I see that, over the course of teaching for 27 years, I feel like the I don't know how to describe it, but the ability for students to have a group discussion about something has decreased. Like my first period class this morning, I was trying to get the kids to have a conversation about the importance and value of names in self-identity and the customs that each of their, nationality, traditions, whatever, created around names. We were reading a novel by Jhumpa Lahiri called The Namesake, and the protagonist's name figures very largely in his own sense of himself and in the plot of the story. So I thought, let's have a discussion, and I thought we would have an active discussion, like, how did you get your name? Oh, my name came from the Bible, or I'm named after my great-grandmother, or whatever the story. And nobody was saying anything. And I had one kid willing to talk. And I don't, and that's the norm, not the, and I remember just a few years ago, conversation being much more easily had. And I don't know if it's all time going by and it's just this generation, or if the pandemic has made people feel much more isolated and thereby more anxious about being together and maybe less comfortable with sharing with one another. I don't know. I don't have the answer.
Yeah, wow, that's interesting.
I don't have an answer. So, anyway. So, wrong page. So, I would like you, if you're comfortable, to tell us a little bit about your childhood. I know from reading the little pieces of your book that I did a few of the chapters in the beginning, and then I felt sort of guilty reading too much of it because you were saying specifically you wanted the readers to read one chapter a week so that we could absorb and talk to our friends and really think about the lessons that we could glean out of each person's mess is their message story. But yours, you talk quite particularly about your own message, your own mess that became your message. I was wondering if you would share it with us.
Sure. I in the book, I share that when I think about, make your mess your message, my life started out as being messy in a sense. I was orphaned in Seoul, South Korea, and found if my records are correct, I was found in a cardboard box in a parking lot, and I was left with no identifying information. You were talking about the importance of names. Well, I was left without a name, a birth date, or a birthplace. So from there, I ended up in an orphanage, a couple of orphanages before being adopted, and by American parents here in the U.S.
Do you have memories of that at all? Or you were an infant?
No, I was an infant. And so I guess my life did start out messy in a sense.
At least non-traditionally.
Yes. Yeah. But it's from that mess that I ended up with what I would consider a charmed life.
Why so?
Just because it's rich with friends, family. I've had a good education. I've never had struggles that were outside the norm that I would have had I not been adopted and brought over to the United States. So even if I hadn't been abandoned, I imagine there are a lot of opportunities I was able to have that if my life hadn't started out
Sure.
so messy, I may not have had.
Well, that makes sense. So your adoptive parents named you, obviously, but, or at least so it seems to me, how did they pick a birthday? Or was the orphanage able to track that down somehow?
The orphanage did, because I was a baby. They thought I might have been around 2 months old or so when I was abandoned. They gave an estimated birth date. Now they put my birthday close to Christmas, and I always think that if they were going to give me a birthday, why put it right next to Christmas? But they gave me an estimated birthday, and it's in December, and that's when I celebrate.
Okay. Interesting. I can't I can't sort of imagine not knowing. Is that hard as a child to sort of wrap your head around the fact that maybe the birth date wasn't correct, or that you had come upon your parents in a non-traditional way? Was that difficult growing up?
For me, I would love to know my birthday. Especially, I have so many friends that love astrology, and
Sure. Well,
I
that's the
could
first
never,
thing
yeah, I could never fully participate. And so, but there's a big identity piece with your birth date,
Yeah.
and so there is I do miss that, I think, that identity piece, but yeah, there definitely is a point. And my daughter too, we adopted my daughter, and her circumstances are very similar. She's adopted from China.
Oh, right.
And I could see, as she's, as I said, she's 21, and she's starting to ask these questions, and she was before, but I can see the identity piece. It's something that doesn't go away.
No. But if anybody could understand her questions and the psychological reasons behind them, it's you. I mean, she
Yeah,
couldn't have
and
been
it's
luckier.
nice. It is nice. And I learned a lot about myself from being a parent of an adoptee. My son is biological. It took us 2 years to adopt, my husband and we came home from China and found I was pregnant 2 weeks after we got home. So we had two babies in
Wow.
1 year. So I've had the experience of being a mom to an adopted daughter and a biological son who are very close in age. And
Almost like
that
having twins.
Yes, it actually was, because they've gone through, because she was developmentally delayed because of probably her circumstances there. They've gone through stages at the same time. So it was like having twins, but I was able to understand a lot more about my adoption
Mm-hmm.
through parenting her.
That's cool.
Mm-hmm.
That's cool. When I was a teenager, I used to babysit for this family that had adopted a little baby girl, and within weeks of bringing their baby girl home, found out that the wife was pregnant.
Oh,
Same
same
exact
thing.
story. They had been trying to get pregnant for years, and that wasn't working. So they said, forget it. We're not doing fertility anymore. Forget it. We're just going to adopt. So they went through the whole couple of years long adoption process. And I guess they both relaxed enough and stopped caring and trying so
Mm-hmm.
hard. And then the magic happened, and she was pregnant. So then they had two kids that were really very close in age. This is
Mm-hmm.
interesting. I'm sure it happens much more than we think it does.
Yeah, I always get a story from somebody, usually that they knew somebody who had a similar circumstance.
Exactly. Exactly. So, um, okay, so let's talk about your book. So you have two books now in the friendship series. The first
Yes.
was the 50/50 Friendship Flow, and you just recently published Make Your Mess Your Message, More Life Lessons from and for My Girlfriends. Discover the powerful and meaningful life-changing conversations. I love the concept of this. Will you tell us a little about it?
Sure. Well, the first book happened a bit by accident, or organically grew into a book. It was my own personal project from my 49th to 50th birthday that I decided to sit down with 50 women in my life one-on-one to let them know what I've learned from each of them.
Wow, that's
And
beautiful.
because and this was also coming on the heels of I had breast cancer. So this was coming on the heels of breast cancer recovery. And so it was really important for me to take this time to share with people what they meant to me. And
That's a
because I'm an
beautiful concept.
oversharer and I shared on social media, it organically grew into a book. And then the pandemic happened. And so I was watching a master class where Robin Roberts said her mom taught her to make her messages. So I thought,
Nice.
hey, I have more people to talk to. And once you start this process, it's hard to really stop. It's actually deepened my friendships and my relationships. So while we were in lockdown here in Washington State, stay-at-home orders, I set up a number of these Zoom dates, about 50 of them, with women now, not just in my location, but I was able to do this with women across the US and a few international locations to ask them that question: what is the mess that became your message?
Wow. I think that's one of the many, not to ever make light of the situation with the pandemic and all the losses, and I would never in 1,000 years make light of it. Our own family, we've lost some people, so I'm not going there. But one of the few good things that came out of this was discovering Zoom and Skype, and in a way that we could video chat with people 5 miles away or 5,000 miles away and stay connected. So that even if we weren't allowed out of our homes because we were on stay-at-home orders or, quarantining or whatever, we were able to feel less isolated. And I think that it was a big boon to our mental health to be able to
Absolutely. Going through this process, especially during the pandemic, was like getting free counseling for me. It's like therapy for me, talking to these women. And some of the women were basically lifelong friends, and I learned things that they went through that I had no idea that they had gone through prior to talking to them, because we don't ask those questions, or we even with our close friends, or talk to them about what's been messy in their life.
No, we don't. I mean, even those of us who feel like they're having in-depth conversations, authentic self to authentic self, we still don't talk about that unless you hit upon, oh, I had cancer too, or my mom had dementia also, or, a similar like thing, a similarity thing. Yeah. So, and I often wonder why our friendships have stagnated that way. Like you get together with a bunch of couples, and I remember, especially with my first husband, we'd have a group of like 8 or 12 of us that would hang out, and all the wives would sit in one room and all talk, and all the husbands would sit in another room and talk, and then we would leave, and on the drive home, he would ask me, so what's going on with our friends? Because the men talked about sports and movies and music and nothing else. Occasionally they'd rag on their wives or like roll their eyes about each other's child rearing or fatherhood or coaching baseball or something. But the wives were the ones who talked about really what was going on. But even in that conversation, we weren't quite getting to the level that your book goes to directly with that question. What is the message of your mess?
And I found out that while a lot of us know what our messes are, we haven't taken the time to reflect back and really think about what the message is that we've gotten from that mess.
Right.
And so asking this question, because all of the women knew that this was the question I was asking, and this is why we were sitting down over Zoom to discuss, or this is what we were going to discuss. So they thought about it for a while. And many said, this is the first time that I really took a step back to reflect on what had happened to me and what I learned from that, or what the benefit was, or where that took me. Which was also healing for them too. So it's such a simple question, but there was so much that we both got from sitting down and having these conversations.
And I just listened to one, I don't know what number or how recent the podcast is, but on your episode of your podcast, you were interviewing a woman who is a professional obstacle course runner.
Yeah, it's Rose Wetzel.
Right. I'd seen the Spartan Warrior thing, and I'd seen the Iron Man championships or whatever they're all called, but it didn't dawn on me that those people were paid or that you could create a living out of that. And when I saw the title of your podcast episode, I was like, oh God, that's the one I'm going to have to start with. I need to know. And I I was like, okay, so where is she going with this obstacle course running? How is this going to turn into a life lesson? And then it just did. How to be resilient and how to manage the next obstacle in your life and so on. And I thought that was like a lightning bolt moment. It's easy to see when you're looking for it like that.
Yeah. She is a professional obstacle course racer.
Who knew that was a thing?
Yeah. But she grew up in a household. Her mom was a bit of a hoarder, and I think, was it 10 kids? 9 kids in the family. And so she literally grew up navigating physical obstacles,
Right.
plus a few other obstacles in the family. And it was interesting because she said on the racetrack, you know the obstacles are going to be there, but you don't think about them and plan ahead. You just know that when they're there,
they don't get you access to them. So
you can conquer it though, but you can conquer it, and you know that they're there not to stop you, but just to divert you or change. You have to change directions. And that was so similar to what we do in life. We get stuck if we think about the obstacles that are going to be there, because we're all going to have obstacles.
Sure.
And we don't know what they're going to be a lot of times, or how they're going to present. So we can't spend time thinking of what's not there, but just knowing that when we get there, we'll be able to navigate whatever obstacle life throws our way, and looking at the obstacle not as something that's stopping us, but something that's changing our direction.
Right.
I thought that
and
was
I think a lot of that wisdom comes with experience and with age and maturity. And, I think that we learn over time, well, all right, I was able to weather that shitstorm. I'm going to be fine with the next one. Things
right.
I did that hard thing. And even though this hard thing, it may be different than that one, I know I have the resilience and the fortitude and the skills and so on to withstand this one too. And it goes along with what she was saying, which I thought was very interesting, that the older, more seasoned athletes were better at navigating the unforeseen hazards and challenges than the younger ones. Even if the younger ones were more fit, so to speak, and had more energy because of their youth, they still weren't as good as the maybe 10 years older athletes who had been around the block a few times.
Yes, and I personally love that.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, and you mentioned about doing things, that challenge you. And there is a woman in the book whose husband came out as gay after 25 years of marriage that she didn't expect. So her mess was having to reinvent basically her identity, her life, and figure out where that was going, because she had her kind of her future in her mind, what it was going to look like. Sure. And all of a sudden everything changed.
Yeah, he upended the whole thing.
Yeah, and one of the things she had to do is she got a book. I think it was entitled something like "Do Something Eat Every Day That Scares You or Frightens You," and she followed that. And so every time, like you said, every time she did something little, and it could be just talking to a stranger because that's not her comfort level. But every time she did something little, it reminded her that she could conquer something a little bigger. I mean, every past obstacle reminded her that, hey, she could conquer something. She's stronger. So continuing to look back at those things that we've conquered is so helpful in getting through what the next obstacle is.
Absolutely. Why did you focus your practice as a... What just happened? Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
I can hear you too. I just heard something go boop, 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 like it was losing power, but nothing's changed. We're still recording.
I didn't hear that on my end. Yeah.
I don't know what that was. Everything's still going. Okay, I'm going to continue because I don't know what that was. That was a little freaky. What was I saying? I was saying, so you used to be an attorney. Yes. Or I guess technically still are an attorney. Mm-hmm. You'll never stop being an attorney, but you're not practicing anymore. Instead, you're now a professional certified midlife mindset coach. Why did you choose midlife as the focus of your practice?
I think that's where, one, I'm in midlife.
Well, yeah.
But it's kind of where, when I first started, coaching, I opened it up to women, just women in general. And the clients that were coming to me were women in their midlife.
Okay.
And it was a recognition, though, that we are at this place in our life that is messy, a lot of us. And a lot of us, from the outside, it looks like, okay, we're set, our kids are getting older, we're established in our careers, many times in our relationships or whatever it is. On the outside, we might look okay, but this is a time in our life where we are redefining ourselves. Our kids may be leaving home,
Sure.
or, choosing or getting into other relationships, leaving the family in some way. We're no longer the moms that we were, for the past 15 to 20 years. Relationships too, a lot of times at this age, and we start to question whether or not, we're here for the long term, or if we've been here because we were raising children together. Also career-wise, this is the time of life where we start to think, hey, I want to do something purposeful. What can I do? And it's kind of like, well, I'm in my 40s or early 50s even, and this is the time that I need to either jump ship or dive in,
Right.
and figure it out. So this tricky place in life, and a place where our parents too are getting older, or many of us are losing parents at this age. This is such a tricky place in life that I find it's a prime time to work with women and help them ask the questions that will help them find what they have inside and what they really want to do with their lives, and to kind of figure that out. It's a time for change, midlife.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Changing physically and hormonally and emotionally and every possible way. I'm totally in there with you.
And many of us at this point too, I'm finding we had a lot of messages and beliefs that have served us for so long, but now at this age, a
That
lot
just
of
don't
times they're no
apply.
longer working for us. Yeah. And we don't even realize that we have those beliefs and messages still in our heads at this age. And so coaching through that, one, it's so quick. For a lot of people, once they find out, where they're still stuck, the growth is so quick and it's so exciting. I just love coaching at this age.
It's wonderful. Yeah, I think that the experience and what we have learned about ourselves, even if we hadn't continued digging deep to get to the root of something, we bring all of that to the table. So it's not like you're talking to a 22-year-old naive person who hasn't been around the block a few times. I know that a lot of my high school friends were all doing things that I think, secretly wanted to do for years and years and years. And then it took us turning 50 to wake us up. I have a friend of mine who just decided that she's always wanted to sing in a rock band. And so she's in medicine and just decided like a year and a half ago or 2 years ago she was going to put a band together. So she did. And now they, it's a cover band and they play the local bar scene and she's having a phenomenal time. I have another friend in our group decided that she always wanted to be a stand-up comic. And she's freaking hysterical.
Isn't that wonderful?
Just can't be sad with Gail around. It's not possible. And so she's been doing that for, I guess, about 3 years now, because it was for a good solid year before the pandemic thing started. And I decided that the book that I had wanted to write for a very long time needed to be written. So I did that during lockdown. And then this podcast sort of was an outgrowth of all of that, this idea that we needed to stop giving away our permission. We don't need anybody else's goddamn permission to do anything in our lives. Just the sheer fact that we want to do it is good enough. Just go do it. Give yourself permission and go do it.
Well, congratulations on your book. And you're right. We were born with these desires, and throughout our early adult life, a lot of times we've ignored what we were born with, the desire to sing, the desire to make people laugh, the desire to write. We push those down. Maybe it's because we think that they won't make enough money, that they're not the right career, they don't look right. We have other people's expectations.
Right.
But this
what
time
are people
in
going to
midlife,
think if I do this?
yeah,
Right.
Exactly. And this time in midlife, it's the time to, get in touch with what was it that I desired when I grew up, when I was a child, because those desires don't leave us. We didn't ask to be singers. We didn't ask to be, comedians. Right. We were born with this. And now's the time to actually, be able to do what we were born with, be able to do our desires. We might not do it full time. We're not going to drop our jobs and our responsibilities, but let's get in touch with these desires now, what things that we were born with.
Yeah, absolutely. And I, like my friend Tim likes to sing, but he doesn't want to sing in like a choir, and he doesn't want to be like Joni and sing in a band. He just sings off key, and he used to not sing in front of other people because he was afraid of what he was going to sound like or what they would think. And then he turned 50 and he's just like, screw that. I'm going to sing because I feel like singing. And if it's off key, so the hell what? Who cares? Exactly. But I think it's metaphoric for what we're all sort of going through, trying to figure out what we want and if we're quiet enough and we can pay attention to what our inner heart wants us to do, what we've always wanted to do, then we should just give ourselves permission to be brave enough to do it and finally listen to ourselves. So what if it's off key? So what if I create art and no one buys it? Who cares? I'm creating it for me. It doesn't matter.
I agree. Absolutely.
Okay. All right. So do you think that, going back to COVID for a minute, do you think that the fact that we have all collectively, globally gone through this trauma, and I say gone through because things have really been starting to open up and I have all my students in class full time, but we're still not over this. We're still in masks, and I'm still nervous about going into the theater and, places that are closed where people would not be masking. I'm still wearing a mask in CVS because I don't know what people's vax status is, and just makes me nervous. But anyway, so do you think that having us all go through this collective trauma helped instigate a lot of this examination of our purpose, analysis of who we are and how we fit into the world? Do you think that the pandemic expedited any of that?
What's interesting, I just watched an interview, and I can't, I was watching in passing, but I heard, they were talking about our job crisis, the difficulty businesses are having right now to get employees. Mm-hmm. And there's a shortage. And why is that? And one of the theories is that because of the pandemic, people have realized this is not what I want to do anymore. I don't want to go and, just for an example, I don't want to go and be a waitress. I want to do something else. I want to start a new business. Or they've had this experience of working from home. I don't want to go back to my service job because I found out, I have these skills now and I could communicate via home. So I think that's one of the pieces of reflection, that we could actually concretely see is just in the service industry.
Sure.
That a lot of people who are working for years in the service industry have this time at home to decide, hey, this is not where I want my life to be. I want to do something different with it. And, that's just one concrete example, but it definitely was a year of reflection for people in all aspects, I think.
Yeah. So what kinds of advice do you think you could give a 50-something woman like you and I think I'm a couple years older than you, who is facing the uncertainty of not really knowing what her next chapter is, but knowing there is a next chapter? What would you tell her? Like, how do you start uncovering and digging out what it is that you want to do?
I think one of the first questions I'd ask her is, in this next phase of life, and so, depending on what if we're talking about, we'd narrow it down if we're talking about relationships or jobs or what it is, but let's assume it's career. Mm-hmm. Could be relationships too, actually. I'd ask, what is the transformation that you want this next career? Is the transformation you want to see in yourself? That's the first question. What is the growth that you want to see in yourself for this next move?
Okay.
And that could be in relationships, like I said, too, when you're looking for this next person, what is that transformation that you want that relationship to have in you?
Mm-hmm.
And so once you first identify that, then the next piece is then what is the transformation that you want to have in that career, for that job? Like, what can you do for that place, or what do you see your talents doing for X, Y, and Z?
Okay.
But I think those are the first two questions that we have to start with when you're looking at what my purpose is. What is transfer? How do you want to feel? What is your transformation that
what
you
do we
want
want
to
it
see?
to look like in our lives? What do we want it to feel like for us?
Mm-hmm.
And then what can we give to what do we bring to the table for that next experience? So
Yes,
you're
yeah.
looking within, and then you're looking outside of yourself at the same time, or
Yeah, and I think oftentimes when we look for a change, like a change in career, we're just looking at what we can get from them, like what's the salary we can get, what's the title we can get. But before we won't be satisfied if that's the only things we focus on. They'll come later, because those are the practical things that we need to
that's
deal
an
with.
end goal. We need a process goal.
But we won't feel personally satisfied with our change until we first know ourselves and what it is how we're looking to feel on our next move.
Exactly. What's in alignment with our core values? What's in alignment with how we see ourselves? What kind of connections and community and meaning do we want the next stage to bring to our lives?
What type of growth do we want? What do we want to feel?
Yeah, that's huge. It's huge. And I think that at this stage in midlife, it makes us appreciate the value of contribution, of taking care of others, of compassion, of empathy, more so than someone sneezed. More so than we did when we were younger, I think.
Yes,
and that as well.
And a lot of times, yes. Well, a lot of times when we were younger, we chose careers a lot of times based on what it would look like to other people.
Right.
Because of the title, because of what we thought we would make, because it was a safe career. So this is oftentimes the first time in our lives that we're choosing careers based on who we are.
Right.
And a lot of times we don't even know, because we've never asked the question. So that's the first question. Who are we? What do we want to see in ourselves? Who do we want to become?
Yeah. For my first job out of college, I went into publishing. I had worked for Random House for like 6 weeks, and then they reorganized my department. But the whole point of going into publishing was my perception of what that would look like to other people. And then from there, a couple of other odd things in between. And then I got a job in public relations in Manhattan. And I thought, all right, I could picture myself in a business suit, carrying a briefcase, walking up Madison Avenue. And that was as far as I got with my concept as to what this job was going to be. Mm-hmm. Yes, I had the requisite skills, but I didn't know what I was applying them to or what that all meant. And then I was working in the job and learning, and I was excited that I was learning new things and meeting new people. And then I had this epiphany that there was some catastrophe. I'm going to put that in big air quotes. Some catastrophe going on in the office, and there were people scurrying around like there was a nuclear war that was imminent, or that they were about to, transplant someone's heart and someone wasn't sure the dry ice would last. Like, it was that level of panic. And what they were talking about was wallpaper. And I thought, not to disparage people in PR, not to disparage people who make pretty wallpaper that might decorate my house. I'm not disparaging any of that, but I had this epiphany in my brain, like, why that didn't make sense to me. This isn't curing cancer. We're not doing heart transplants. This isn't nuclear war. It's wallpaper. And yes, it's important to get a job done and take pride in your work, but I thought there's a major disconnect here. And then I started asking and answering other questions for myself. Although what would something that would align and make sense to me, what would that look like? Just like you were suggesting. And my aunt actually had me sit down and make a list of the things that I wanted my life to look like in 5 years. Like, what did I want to see?
Oh, that's great.
You know, what did I want to feel? Did I want to be married? Did I want to have children? What kind of career? What did I want my impact to be? You know, the same kinds of questions that you ask your clients. When I was like 26 or 25.
Wow.
And I was sort of resistant to it because I'm like, I don't know what the hell I want to do in 5 years. I don't know what I want to do in 5 weeks. Like, what do you mean? But she forced me to sort of look ahead and imagine what I wanted to look for, so that I had more of a global, like, long-term kind of goal. And that's what directed me to teaching ultimately, because it used all of my skills and what was touched upon my need and desire to affect positive change in other people.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was like pretty high up on my list of non-negotiables. So sorry, not doing PR for wallpaper again, you know, like that just.
And what a gift your aunt gave you at, you know, in your mid-20s to have somebody sit down and go through that with you. I think that's very rare. And what a gift that was.
Well, because she herself had make mistakes. Like, she was very good in science and math when she was in high school and had always been interested in medicine and had gone to nursing school and became a cardiac care nurse. And while she loved that, she didn't love the hours when she was ultimately working. She didn't love the pay. She didn't love, you know, the ultimate, like, responsibility, the way our medical system overworks nurses. And then when she had children, she felt like she was not around when she needed to be. That juggling school hours and non-school hours and childcare with her, you know, 12, 14, 16-hour shifts, like however that works, was kind of impossible. And so she left nursing and became a realtor and has been phenomenally successful. But she said to me, like, she was sharing her experience, you know, like, don't decide in your mid-30s after you've had kids that you want to change direction if you can do it now when you don't have the responsibilities and the expectations on top of you to potentially curb your enthusiasm for what it is you're doing, or so on. It's a TV show, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, you know, it really was a very exceptionally rare gift, because I looked at her story and I knew at that moment that I wanted to be a mom. I'd known since I was like 3 years old that I wanted to be a mom. I didn't know if I would ever get married or if there would be a significant other in the picture. Like, that really wasn't on the map for me as much as motherhood. And it really was motivating. Well, what can I do that fills all of these boxes, that checks all these boxes for me, that is consistent with my own values and will allow me to be there for my kids that I know I want to have. And I don't know, it's just like a most amazing question. So I think that more of us should have those kinds of questions with our own children. I think that might help them avert the intensity of the midlife, I hate to use the word crisis, but the midlife decision or angst. You know, it's like teenage angst all over again. You know,
I agree. Those conversations would be great. And also it tells our younger people that we as parents, especially as a parent talking to their child, that we're giving them permission to actually pursue what they love, that they don't have to meet our expectations,
right?
But you know, that we're supporting them in their own separate journey.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Nothing more important than that, I think, as parents, you know, to raise kids who are authentically who they are and not little versions of who we think they should be.
Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's important. So where can we buy your books, Shari?
Well, it's Amazon's the easiest, but also barnesandnoble.com. I think everywhere books are sold,
Okay.
especially online.
Yes. So we will put links. I will put links. If you scroll down, if you're not driving, you can scroll down on the podcast, and there'll be links to how to get in touch with Shari Leid and both of her books. Is there a third coming out in the series?
Well, you'll love this because it did end up being a series since it was 2. And I thought, oh, there's no way I could have a series with 2 books. So there has to be 3. And I love the number 3. So yes, I'm actually wrapping up. I have, I think, 3 more appointments or meetings with women. But this third book, I am giving each woman 3 different choices of questions to choose one to answer. They all get different questions. And
Nice.
these are kind of a variety of questions that we ask throughout our lives. So yeah, there's a third book that'll be out next fall.
That's awesome. 3 books in 3 years. You're quite prolific.
3 books in 3 years, and they'll be done for this series. But you can't have a series with 2. You have to have 3.
You have to have 3, otherwise it's.
And there's more people to talk to. I'm telling you, you probably know this from your podcast, talking to people on your podcast. Yeah. You start asking questions and getting to know people. Yeah. It's really hard to stop once you get that momentum.
It's such a beautiful thing to have all of you amazing guests want to talk to me for 45 minutes to an hour, and I learn all sorts of things about your life. For me, it's like, I like you were saying with all of the meetings that you were having with the women in your book, it was like each one of these episodes is like a therapy session for me, that I get to share out publicly with the world. And I can't think of anything better to do with my time other than the other things that I'm doing.
Exactly. And then you get an instant connection from having these conversations that you wouldn't get otherwise. And same with, sitting down one-on-one with even close friends. It just deepens the connection that you already have.
So I think I'm going to take you up on your challenge. So over the course of the next year, to commit to meet with at least 3 people one-on-one, a lifelong friend, a relative, or a new acquaintance, or someone that you've known for a while but have never shared a meal with, and ask the question, what is the mess that became your message? So if you're going to
love that.
It's wonderful. So if you're going to do that with me, and I think you all should, so you're going to talk to a friend, a relative, and a new acquaintance and ask them, what is the mess that became your message? And then you're going to hashtag, and I'll put it all in the show notes, mess to message challenge, so that Shari can see the pictures of all of our amazing growth and connections and so on. I think that's awesome.
I love that. I'm so excited to find out who you meet with and what the messes are that became the messages.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much, Shari. This was better than I had hoped for. This was so wonderful to meet you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's a pleasure meeting you.